the ceasefire with Hezbollah now working, that puts more pressure on Hamas to do a ceasefire. And so perhaps this is part of Hamas's response and Hamas showing some interest in a ceasefire, but there's still sticking points between Hamas and Israel. We also don't know if Hamas really will relent under pressure. It has in the past been impervious to pressure. And remember, many of their fighters are ready for martyrdom. So they could fight on, but certainly the pressure is on them. And everyone is cognizant of the fact that there are 101 hostages still in Gaza. The Biden administration desperately wants to get a ceasefire with Hamas in place before the end of the Biden administration and get those hostages returned. We just don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, we can't forget how much harder it makes things when people are willing to die for their cause because they believe in it so strongly like that. You're right. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu scoring a major win with that ceasefire this week, but the hostage issue remains a real political time bomb for him. What kind of balance does he have to strike between fighting the war and making sure those hostages come home safely, however many are left?
Well, he is under enormous pressure domestically to get the hostages returned. And you see some of the families have been in the news lately, in the media, also trying to put pressure on him. But he has also been resistant at times, and he has certain military objectives that he wants to achieve in Gaza. And by the way, the news reporting suggests he is still trying to accomplish those strategic objectives. He's still trying to decimate Hamas. He's still trying to weaken them more, go after more fighters. He's done assassination attempts or targeting of people, Hamas fighters who he thinks were involved in the October 7th attacks. And so we don't know whether he's really willing to go to the bargaining table, to the negotiating table, to make the compromises are necessary to have a ceasefire and have a return of hostages, or whether he wants a few more months of doing offensive attacks inside Gaza before he's ready to go to the table. Keep in mind also, he's got a good friendship and open line of communication with incoming President Trump, and maybe he wants to wait until Trump is president to do a ceasefire. And maybe he thinks he'll get better terms with the Trump administration helping mediate that ceasefire.
Well, the UN is saying today that it will suspend aid deliveries across Gaza after looters repeatedly attacked the convoys, and it's actually blaming Israel for the breakdown of the rule of law. If you can paint the picture there for us from what you know about that, and what kind of responsibility does Israel have in making sure that aid gets into Gaza safely?
Well, Israel and the international community have a responsibility to make sure that people inside Gaza do not starve. And this is also something Jake Sullivan talked about today, that the specter of starvation is always hanging over Gaza, and it's more serious now than it has been in the past. And part of that is because the aid workers aren't able to distribute the aid. The security is an issue for them. There was a recent Israeli offensive that killed some aid workers from World Central Kitchen. So that also makes it more difficult for aid workers to go in. Some aid workers have suspended operations. That's made it easier for looters to steal some of the aid if it's dropped off, on the perimeter of Gaza rather than brought into Gaza and distributed in an organized way. And that's part of the problem. And so until there's better security and there's a more coordinated effort between Israel and the international aid workers and the NGOs responsible for distributing the aid, this problem is going to go on, and more people are on the verge of starvation.
Yeah, several months ago, that was a devastating blow to aid workers when that happened to the World Kitchen's vehicle there. Turning to Syria now, where rebels have scored major wins in Aleppo against Syrian President Assad's forces. Will this spark a wider insurrection, do you think?
Well, this was a surprising development over the last week. Of course, we know that the civil war in Syria has been going on since 2011. It's never been fully settled, but the Sunni Arab militants in northwest Syria had not been as active, and now they've done this attack on Aleppo. They've taken over large parts of Aleppo. That was a strategic objective of them. These are, hardline Islamist fighters from HTS, which used to be al-Nusra, which used to be affiliated with al-Qaeda. So there is reason to be concerned about them. But it's also a complicated battlefield because this is also a problem for Russia, for Iran, and for Assad, who are also our adversaries who are fighting against them and feel threatened by them as well.
Yeah, it's like a web, isn't it? How much all of this is connected. Putin signed a major defense spending bill, pledging almost a third of Russia's total budget on war. So what does this signal for the future of the war in Ukraine?
First of all, it's unbelievable that Russia can spend that much of its budget on the military and still keep the economy going and still feed people. And so I think Putin has to be concerned about the impact this will have on the economy. But it shows that Putin wants to give people in America and in the NATO countries in Europe the impression that he's in this fight for the long haul. And that's part of his bargaining effort. And he knows that President Trump is coming in. He knows President Trump has said he wants to solve and have peace between Ukraine and Russia within 24 hours of him becoming president. And so Putin is trying to lay it all on the table. And it's not clear if that's going to work. And it really is a lot up to President Trump, because President Trump first has to try to get this peace deal. He's going to do that by doing one-on-one negotiations with Putin and with Zelensky. And then if he is not able to get a peace deal, he has to decide whether he's going to continue the U.S. military aid for Ukraine. But part of the leverage we have with Russia is for Russia to believe that we're going to continue that U.S. aid. The sticking point for President Zelensky in these negotiations is he can't do a deal if he doesn't get a security guarantee. And the gold standard for security guarantees is for Ukraine to become part of NATO. And Russia has been resistant to that. So that's part of why I'm somewhat pessimistic about the possibilities of there being a peace deal, especially so soon as Trump wants, within 24 hours. But let's see what happens.
All right. Former Obama campaign foreign policy advisor and former State Department official David Tafuri, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.